Brand new polls this morning showing two Republican candidates gaining some traction in battleground Iowa. Both Donald Trump and Dr. Ben Carson are the two who are leading this enormous pack of candidates. Trump surging with 23% as Dr. Carson jumps into second place. Look at that, 18%. And the next closest is Ted Cruz at 8%. But Governor Bobby Jindal says Trump mania, he believes, will not last forever. Here he is.
I think Donald Trump has done a great job tapping into the anger, the frustration that voters feel, Martha, not only with President Obama, but with the Republican leadership as well. But what the polls tell me is that nobody has any real votes right now. I think that after we get past this summer of silliness and insults, the voters are going to begin to look at who is prepared to do the job.
Calling it the summer of silliness and insults. Joined now by Karl Rove, former senior advisor and deputy chief of staff to President George W. Bush, also a Fox News contributor, of course. Karl, good morning. Good to have you here. Do you agree with Bobby Jindal?
Thanks, Martha. Well, look, we have a summer of silliness. We could have a fall of silliness. Remember, at this point in 2011, the leader in the Republican pack was Rick Perry, governor of Texas. After that, we had Herman Cain and former Speaker Newt Gingrich. Both of them jumped to the lead. So, look, you could say that it's been a summer of silliness if you're not a Trump fan. But my sense is we're likely to see this thing come and go, and other faces emerge, and people grab the lead and then lose the lead and maybe re-grab the lead. We got a long way to go before we start voting in February, and the race is going to be unsettled, I think, for a long time, given the fact that we have so many different candidates in the race.
And it's such a long way to go, and that is the biggest point here. Take a look at this, though. Brand new polls from Quinnipiac this morning with some extraordinary numbers in terms of the read on how people feel in this country. Karl, how satisfied are you with the way things are going in the United States today? 71% of Americans are somewhat or very dissatisfied, and that may be why we see so much interest and intrigue in Donald Trump. And then what I find so interesting, Karl, in second place now, a person who could not be more polar opposite in his style from Donald Trump, the very reserved Dr. Ben Carson, who has quietly moved up his numbers into second place. I mean, Jeb Bush is, I don't know, fourth, fifth maybe in this particular poll?
Yeah. Yeah, well, first of all, let's talk about those numbers about the dissatisfaction with the direction of the country and the anger towards our institutions of government. You can go back to 2007 and find similar numbers in advance of the 2008 election. And, of course, in that election, we ended up picking an outsider who was in Washington, the newly elected senator from Illinois. But this is where we are and have been for a while in American politics, with people upset with Washington, maybe a little bit stronger back then for different reasons, maybe different reasons today, but an intense dissatisfaction with Washington. It was sort of that way. We've seen that happen a number of times. It's why Republicans have tended to elect and to nominate and elect people who have been outside of Washington. Governor Reagan of California, Governor Bush of Texas, for example, or even people inside Washington who are seen as mavericks, Senator McCain of Arizona. But, to me, what's interesting about that number is not simply that it's there, but how does it express itself in the ultimate choice? Because in 2007, we went through a number of different candidates before we settled on McCain. Yep. In 2011, we went through a number of candidates before we settled on Romney. And the question is going to be, how do we do this time? Now, what was interesting to me was in that Quinnipiac poll, they measured the favorable and unfavorable of the Republican candidates. And this is among Republicans. Marco Rubio was favorably thought of by 72% of Republicans. Only 3% had a negative. So his net number is 69%. Ben Carson, 62 favorable, 6 unfavorable, 56. Donald Trump, who today leads, was in 11th place with 59% favorable, but a very significant 30% unfavorable and 29 net. So all of these candidates, Huckabee, Walker, Bush, Fiorina, Cruz, Kasich, Jindal, and Perry, all had better numbers than Trump, and yet Trump is leading. This says that Trump is drawing some support that has an intensity, but he's also generating the intensity in opposition.
I know, but you look at the process last time around with Romney and the time before that with McCain, and I think a lot of people on your side of the aisle look at that process and say, hey, that didn't work very well for us. We ended up sort of moving to the middle and going with the person who, didn't get beaten up to the point where they had to, lose momentum. And you get the person who sort of survives the process. And that person was not able to pull off an electoral victory in the end.
Yeah, well, and right, and because I think two things. One is because the process left them beaten up and bloodied at the end of it. In fact, some of the attacks, for example, on Mitt Romney over his business background were not started by Barack Obama. They were started by opponents of Mitt Romney in the primary and insufficiently answered. He answered them well enough to get the nomination, but the base had been laid there. The second issue is, do candidates do things in the primary that they think allow them to win the primary that cause them to be in difficulty in the general election? Mitt Romney, again, self-deportation, alienated the Latino vote. He got 27% of them in the general election. But let's be clear about one thing. What ended in the general election, what mattered was more than anything else, the inability of the Republicans to expand and broaden their coalition. We had a record number of self-identified Republicans turn out and vote in the 2012 election, and a record number of self-identified conservatives. There weren't stay-at-home Republicans and conservatives. It was our inability to win swing voters that cost us the election.
Karl, thank you very much. Long way to go here.
Thank you,
We'll
Martha.
see who's right. Good to see you, Karl.